Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Integer and welcome to episode 2 of What's in My Steam Library. And today I will be talking about Act of Aggression, an RTS game released by, let me just quickly check the developer because I can't remember, Eugen Systems. I think these guys came from companies like Westfood, the original developer behind Command and Conquer series, and I think some other people who worked for Blizzard and a few other companies. A lot of unspecific details, but what I'm trying to say is these guys kind of knew what they were doing, or at least that's what you would expect, given their background. The game was released in 2015, and the reason I'm not in the game is the following. I had downloaded the game a couple of weeks ago, and I tried to boot it 2 days ago to have this recorded, and it gave me two options. Act of Aggression or Act of Aggression Reboot Edition, asking me which one I wanted to choose. So I went with Reboot Edition, and I think that was basically like a big patch, and I think they reinstated the Reboot Edition instead of the original one, fixing some performance gameplay issues, but I think they were mostly focusing on performance optimization and gameplay bugs, rather than, revamping the gameplay mechanics and balance and so on and so forth. I am not in the game, however, because I was trying to launch it, and I was able to get into the game the first time just fine, and then it asked me whether I wanted the game to pick up the best graphical settings given my hardware, and I said yes. The game had crashed then. I waited a few minutes just to see if it was able to pick it up eventually and kind of snap out of it. It wasn't. And when I went back to my Steam library afterwards, it was grayed out, as if it had uninstalled itself. There was another interesting thing that happened. All the icons of the processes and programs running in the background, the antivirus, MSI Afterburner, Riva Tuner, Radeon drivers, and a few other things, started closing down, which I thought was super weird. It's as though the computer was turning itself off, or getting ready for a shutdown. That wasn't the case. I also wasn't able to open Start menu. That had bugged out. Basically, the Windows Explorer had crashed as well. So I had to do a hard restart to get everything back up and running, because I couldn't do it any other way. Now, the interesting thing is, you'd say, okay, well, maybe the game tried to run the settings, it errored out, something crashed. Nope, that's my phone beeping. Let's turn off the sound to make sure this doesn't happen again. There we go. And, it uninstalled itself, which, I guess is not very common, but I could kind of understand why that would happen. However, that's not the case. If I go to the location, that's not the location, by the way, where I have my game downloaded and installed, the folder's still here, and if we look at the size, it's almost it's 18.3 gigs. If we try to install the game, it says 18.7. That's pretty much the whole game. So all the game files are still in this location. They're still here. However, when I try to run, the Reboot Edition shortcut, the executable doesn't even work. If I run the original one, it prompts me with the installation table on Steam as if the game wasn't here. And if I choose the original directory maybe Steam can detect that there's game files present already, validate them and download whatever is missing or whatever is extra necessary. That doesn't happen because it doesn't pick up this folder at all, it seems. And other than that, I only have 17 gigabytes or so of free space, so there's not enough space for the game. So this is the unfortunate occurrence, and I won't be able to show Act of Aggression. I'm definitely not re-downloading again, and I think this is one of the main reasons why people in the first place, when the game was released back in 2015, had problems with it. Optimization and just the way the game ran, it wasn't very stable. Now, if we talk about the game itself, well, it's really very well portrayed by the overall mixed reviews. It says 63% of the reviews are positive, and I would kind of generally agree with it. There are some positive reviews, some negative reviews. It's very well summed up. It's a generic RTS. You have three factions that have slightly different units, slightly distinguished technology trees, or I don't even no, that's not a really accurate thing to say. Slightly different units, the way they work, the way they operate, the build queues, therefore, are slightly different. However, it's very much counter-based, and it feels unoriginal. You build resource gathering buildings for a few different types. You can also run into the buildings, certain buildings like what they call banks. If you deposit your soldiers inside, you will gain resources over time as well. It doesn't really stand out, and I've played about 28 hours. I think that pretty much was all spent on the campaign, which I was streaming. And there was another thing which really, I must say, bothered me at the time. I played throughout, I'd say, about 70 or 80% of the whole campaign, and I was enjoying it. I can't say I wasn't. I was enjoying it. It was good fun, and it was pretty smooth ride until I hit that one mission where the sudden difficult spike just made it, to me personally, pretty much impossible to play. The multiplayer side at that time was pretty decent. I had quite a bit of fun playing multiplayer. The game had released an open beta before it was officially launched, and it was multiplayer only, if I'm not mistaken. I think you could be playing against bots, but I also think there were only 2 factions available out of the 3 that are in the game right now, or the third one that was introduced on full launch. And it was enjoyable, but I'd say not enough substance to carry it through. And year and a half, or however much later it is right now, this game has pretty dead multiplayer community. If we do Steam charts and check how many people are playing or have been playing the game recently, Act of Aggression averages not a lot of players. 30-day average is 81. The peak numbers are about 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5. Well, there was, on the release, you see up to 3,000 players. But very quickly, the fallout was very evident, where month by month, numbers were dropping by 100 or more. Not to mention the initial drop-off after first month of, that's what, 75 or so percent. So it's clear that the community, the overall community, received the game pretty alright in the beginning, and then suddenly realized that, well, after maybe finishing their campaign and playing a good few hours with their friends, or trying to do multiplayer, competitive or otherwise, there's just not a lot to keep you interested and keep you coming back for it. And I think that pretty much sums up the game well. It's an average run-down-of-mill RTS, which is competent, but not sufficient to keep you interested for a long time. As it stands currently, it's £24 here in the UK, or your regional equivalent, and that's definitely too high a price to ask for it, in my opinion. I would say if you were able to pick up a couple of copies for £10 or £15, and if you are into real-time strategy games, this might have some playable value for you if you want to grab a copy for yourself and your friend and do some multiplayer, or co-op against AI just for funsies. Co-op campaign is not a thing, and there are no such thing as co-op missions. And yes, it's otherwise pretty generic, pretty standard real-time strategy game, which is real pity in my opinion, because they had this slightly futuristic technological approach that they were going for, and they could have pushed it a little bit further. Could have gone with a slightly more interesting, different units for different factions. Introduce some new ways how enemies can be countered, because as it stands now, you just spam pretty much one unit, and if you're not fast enough, or if you prepared for something else, you're pretty much screwed, because you can't counter that certain type of tank that the enemy is attacking you with. He's got 50 of those, and you've got something that's not efficient against it, and that's pretty much it. There's very little maneuvering space as far as I can tell. So yes, Act of Aggression, unfortunate, maybe not as a big failure as to call it a flop, but it definitely did not impress for long enough, and as it stands, it's definitely going to be forgotten, unfortunately, in the nearest future. if it hasn't been forgotten already. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Next game on the list is Age of Empires 2, the HD edition. I will specifically talk about HD edition and what the Steam edition has brought to the game, or in general to the real-time strategy genre. But the next episode is going to be a good one. I'm hoping to dish that out within a week, maybe 6 or 7 days from the release of this video on my YouTube channel, so stay tuned. And yes, that's going to be the first big one. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. A little bit of insight in active aggression, shed you a bit more light if you were, pondering whether the game is actually worth it. And yes, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click the like button if you enjoyed the video. Dislike button is right there as well. And stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you would like to receive notifications of my future content. My name is Ben Integer, and I will talk to you very shortly. Take care for now.